While hundreds of thousands of people were cheering in Tiananmen Square to celebrate the birth of a new nation, was a plane loaded with bombs moments away from changing history forever? It was October 1st, 1949. After decades of civil war, invasion, and famine, Mao Zedong was about to step onto the balcony in Beijing to announce the official start of the People's Republic of China. It was the end of one era and the beginning of another. But while the red flags waved and the crowd sang, the man who had lost control of the territory months earlier was watching closely from the south. He had an air raid in the works, a strike that could have wiped out the new leadership in a single afternoon. But here's where the story divides. There are two versions of what happened next. One gets repeated online, over and over, complete with names, timelines, even exact dialogue. But there's another version backed by the historical record itself. And as we're about to see, they don't always tell the same story. Days before the ceremony, in southern China, Chiang Kai-shek, leader of the Kuomintang, was tracking every piece of news coming out of Beijing. So when he confirmed the ceremony would go ahead, he called his son Chiang Jing-guo, cursing the Communist Party as he searched for a way to stop that day from happening. It was Chiang Jing-guo who came up with the answer. The People's Liberation Army still didn't have an air force capable of defending Beijing's skies, and the Kuomintang still had over 100 B-24 bombers, handed to them years earlier by the United States. With no one to stop them in the air, an attack on the ceremony was, at least on paper, entirely doable. So Chiang Kai-shek immediately called Zhou Jiro, commander of his air force, with a direct order: get the bombers ready and make sure the ceremony never took place. The plan was set. The planes would take off from the Zhoushan Islands, just over 1,000 kilometers from Beijing, with enough time to get there, carry out the mission, and make it back before nightfall. That last part mattered, since those bombers had no way of flying in the dark. Zhou Jiro was waiting for the final go-ahead. Everything was in place, but the order never came the way he expected. "Wait," Chiang told him over the phone. Half an hour later, Zhou called again and got the same answer. "Wait," then again and again, 4 times in total, every half hour, while the planes sat on the ground and the clock kept running. The ceremony, meanwhile, had originally been set for 10 in the morning that October 1st. But that same morning, a radio broadcast announced that the start had been pushed to 3 p.m. In Beijing, Luo Ruiqing, the city's head of security, had stayed behind while the communist leaders climbed up to Tiananmen. His job was to wait for a call from Air Force Command, since if that phone rang, it meant the attack had begun. 3 o'clock came and went. So did 6. The phone never rang. Then Zhou Jiro made one last call, insisting the mission could still go through. This time, Chiang's answer was different. Cancel it. But this didn't fit the rest of his story. This was the same man who, 11 years earlier, had ordered the Yellow River dikes blown open to slow the Japanese advance, flooding entire towns without a second thought. So calling off an attack hours before it launched didn't sound like him. No one ever established with any certainty why Chiang pulled the plug that afternoon. Before we get into the second part of this story, if you're enjoying this video, hit like and subscribe so more people can find out what really happened behind the founding ceremony of the People's Republic of China. Now, let's look at what part of all this can actually be confirmed, because the documents that survived from that time tell a slightly different story. What had been rumors just months earlier turned out to be a legitimate fear. On May 4th, 1949, just 5 months before the ceremony, the Kuomintang had bombed the Nanyuan airfield, only 13 kilometers from Tiananmen Square. 6 B-24 bombers took off from Qingdao, killed 24 people, and destroyed hangars and aircraft on the ground. That attack wasn't a rumor or a legend. It had actually happened, and it made clear that Beijing was still within reach from the air. More than 300,000 people gathered in the square that day. None of them knew how close the ceremony had come to becoming a military target. So, with that still fresh, the communist government wasn't about to leave anything to chance for October 1st. In just a few weeks, an improvised fighter squadron was put together at Nanyuan, flying recovered and repaired P-51s. It wasn't a real Air Force yet, not officially. The People's Liberation Army Air Force wouldn't be formally established until November 11th of that year, over a month after the ceremony. What was guarding Beijing's skies that October 1st was, in practice, an emergency unit thrown together in a hurry. Observation posts also went up in Jiangsu and Suzhou, with a single job: watch the sky and sound the alarm if enemy aircraft showed up. Anti-aircraft guns were positioned around the city. And the ceremony's schedule really was changed, just not for some unexplained reason. 10 in the morning wasn't a random time. It was the traditional hour for ceremonies like this one. The shift to 3 p.m. came down to a purely technical issue. The Kuomintang's B-24 bombers, based out of the Zhoushan Islands, had no way of navigating at night. A morning takeoff gave them room to fly there and back in a single day. An afternoon one would have left them stranded, unable to make it home before dark. So the schedule change was never really a mystery. It was a calculated move to make any air attack impossible, whether it came or not. That afternoon, while the crowd sang in the square, 17 planes flew over Tiananmen as part of the parade. What the public didn't know was that 4 of those fighters were carrying live ammunition, ready to intercept any hostile aircraft that showed up. No one in the square ever found out. So what about the rest of the story? The order to Zhou, the calls every half hour, the wait, cancel it. That version has been circulating online for years, repeated in dozens of articles, almost word for word. But Chiang Kai-shek's personal diary, now digitized and publicly available, describes his state of mind that same day very differently. It records him as optimistic, mostly worried about whether the Soviet Union would recognize the new government. There's no mention of bombers, no mention of Zhou, no mention of any attack order. That's not definitive proof the plan never existed, but it's the closest thing we have to the original source of this story. And that source doesn't say what everyone keeps repeating. Zhou, for what it's worth, wasn't just any name inside the Kuomintang. Months later, after settling in Taiwan alongside Chiang, he ended up commanding real Air Force bombing runs over Shanghai. The Kuomintang clearly had the operational capacity to carry out an attack like the one Chiang is said to have ordered. But that's a story for another video. If you want us to make it, leave a comment with the word Shanghai. Thanks for watching until the end. And if you want to go deeper into China's history, don't miss the video on the secrets behind the country's most powerful drink. See you in the next one.